Welcome, fellow druids, to Full Circle. I'm Chad, and this is a viewer-selected topic talking about how to approach Warjack spam. And so, just real quick, this is not going to necessarily delve deeply into every solution to Warjack spam solution or every possibility. This is going to be looking high level at what Warjack spam is and how you should approach it, and different ways to think about that. So, first, obviously we're talking about Warjacks. I'm going to leave out War Beasts for now because the Horde side of things is actually very different in how you may have to approach that particular situation. All of the War Beasts are very different from how Warjacks work out. So we're talking about lists with a significant number of Warjacks, and presently those include things like in Khador, we're talking about Harkovich, Karchev. They're going to be playing a lot of heavy Warjacks, of course, because Khador doesn't have lights. In Protectorate, we're looking primarily at Amon, although they do have some others that could bring to bear quite a few Warjacks if they so choose. In Signar doesn't really do a ton of this, but if they did, I would say you're looking at maybe Cray, but they're going to be bringing fewer jacks because they're a little bit more expensive. Signar is going to be bringing ranged jacks is something you consider, but again, they're a little bit more of a unique situation. Crix is starting to do this. I think you'll see this with their Black Industries list, where there's actually a list right now that's pretty popular with 9 Slayers. It's starting to increase in popularity. Mercenaries actually have a few of these. Ostrom plays quite a few Warjacks. As does, I've seen Magnus 2, who also gives his Warjacks unyielding. You may see some spam there. Nomads primarily being the Warjack of choice there. In Retribution, I would say you're going to see it with Viros 2, the old Synergy Griffin spam type list. So it's going to be more lights there than heavies. Who have I left out? Convergence. Their most played lists probably do have a significant number of Warjacks, although you'll probably still see them with 2 Transfinite Emergence Projectors, which you hear commonly referred to as the TEP. So how do you approach it? Well, first let's look at, before we even get the lists on the table, what the situation is, right? Are we in a place where you showed up at your game night and the two of you just threw a random list down to see what's going to happen? Or are you in a tournament? If you're in a tournament, now the thing is, try to do your best to assess what your situation is going to actually be at the tournament, and then use that to inform some of your list choices, right? Because some lists are going to be able to deal with Warjack spam either better or in different ways. But don't forget about the point where I was saying, if you just showed up to your game night and threw a list down and your opponent threw down jack spam. So first, it also depends on the type of Warjacks that we're talking about, right? And the scenario is going to be a big factor. So let's assume you just showed up with a random list. What tools do you have in that list? How well can it deal with heavies, and what level of heavy can it deal with? Things in Protectorate and basically outside of Khador for the most part, if you would be surprised, so don't sell yourself short on the amount of armor you can actually crack. Anything that's between armor 17 and 19, our infantry and our options actually are going to have a decent time with, as long as you can sort of select how you're approaching that. So that's something to look at, right? So make sure first that you're assessing target priority. Don't just try to spread a bunch of damage out. You want to be trying to sort of laser out 1, 2, as many as you can, really, but make sure you're actually killing what you're, or crippling sufficiently, especially if they don't have mechanics or you have grievous wounds. Make sure that you're sort of working like that, and at the same time be looking at your win conditions, right? If they have a bunch of Warjacks and you have more, let's say you have a bunch of infantry, what you want to be trying to do is keeping their stuff from being able to score as meaningfully as you can while you're able to score. So say we're talking about a scenario like Spread the Net, or standoff where you have a zone you can score, a lot of the times those Warjack lists, all of their Warjacks are valuable. And it depends on like if they have lights versus heavies, but a lot of the times their jacks are valuable. They can't just like throw them all at you, or they won't, even if they might be able to get away with it. So if you have infantry, you can always run models into their zone to contest where they can't necessarily, you can contest with, say, a single shifting stone or a single Tharn Bloodweaver, which doesn't really cost you much when it dies. They often will have to contest with something like a dervish or a marauder or something like that. And if you can kill that model if they're contest and they contest with a model like that and you can kill it, you're ending up ahead in the like trade that you're engineering there. So that's one place to start to look. Another is start assessing what the weakest point of their list is and how to exploit it. Scenario is one thing. Often heavy Warjack lists don't have the ability to flank very hard. So that's a place where if you have something fast, like say Wolf Riders that I've played, any of the Tharn models are pretty good at this. Things like Druids actually are decently good at this. Either the 2 Druid units. You could do this with ambushing Wolves Vorboros. That's another unit that's going to be pretty good at that. You can use like a Fulcrum out on the flank, although it's only doing okay against Warjacks, but it can boost a lot of damage actually, so it's not terrible. Things like that. So the more you can spread out, the better it is for you, because a Warjack list typically wants to brick up so that it can take advantage of all of the battle group benefits and support benefits and things like that. But then also look, like, what is the weakest point? So Harkovich, Amon, less Viros 2 and Karchev. Asphyxius 3 depends significantly on if it's his feat turn and like where he's at and how much he's spent. Magnus certainly falls into this, but you have to watch out for his feet. Anyways, any of those casters are probably the weakest thing in their entire list. Harkovich is very survivable if there's a Jack touching him and he's camping some focus, but say you have Kruger 2 and you find yourself playing against Harkovich Jack spam list. Don't just like crush up against his armor 23 Warjacks and hope for the best. Try to engineer an assassination. The one thing that, being able to place one of his jacks away from him, place him closer, start shooting at him, getting your melee on him, and so forth, is going to give you the way to approach that game. The other way to approach it is if you know, like, it's pretty likely that I'm going to be dealing with this, bring a list that's designed to crack a significant amount of armor. And encircle those are things like Una 2, Kaya 3, Chromac 2, to a lesser extent Kaya 2. Those are all lists that you can engineer to try to start winning this trade situation. They all approach it a little bit differently. With some of them, make sure that you're actually utilizing your caster safely, but to do work, right? So if you can get your caster in a position where you can sort of safely use them to clear a zone or kill at least one heavy without too much worry of reprisal, you absolutely need to do that. I played a game almost a year ago now with Kaya 2 against Amon, which generally speaking is not favorable for Kaya because I've got like 4 Whirlpools and maybe 2 lights. I think I had Laris and a Wild Argus in the list. It was like, yeah, I think I had Loki, Feral, Stalker, Getorix. This was pre-themes time. And he has, dervishes, which can all kill circle heavies and like Crusader and maybe 1 Templar or something like that, some stuff like that. Those are all way cheaper, which means I have to basically be killing at a factor of like 2 or 3 to 1 with my models. And I did, because I was able to get, so Kaya 2 has flank with a faction war beast, so I was able to put Laris in a position to like soften up a target. Kaya charged in, did a lot of damage with flank, kept 1 or 2 focus, and was able to play safe. This was sort of like once the lines were closed, of course. So you want to be able to make sure you're doing stuff like that. The other thing you want to do is try to use as much control as you can. So someone like Mosar, for example, he's gonna, besides the fact that his feat is going to turn off power up, you also have pillars, which they're going to have to waste some resources on killing that they don't want to spend. He has Sunhammer, which is slowly going to be doing damage. So this is ways to start getting yourself ahead on the damage. And what you want to do with somebody like that is just try to slowly whittle away at all of what they have going on. Kruger 2 can do this to an extent, but you have to watch out for Jumpstart if you do. But being able to just like TK a Jack backwards so that it can't charge something the next turn and it lost 2 inches is often, you know, if you can do that to 2 or 3 and then like kill 1 or 2 every turn, eventually you're going to be able to win out. You're not always going to be able to do that. Like Harkovich that I mentioned, Jumpstart is going to be really a pretty big problem. You can control the list to an extent using, if you have like a combined arms list, right, where you have like, I don't know, let's say half the list is infantry and half the list is your battle group. You're going to be able to do stuff like that by also just putting models in the way. Try to control what he can do at any given time. I recently have played, and I may do a video on this later, but I recently have tested out a list that Tom Guan played with Balder 1, and the only... it has a Woldrath and it has Snapjaw, Wrong and Snapjaw in it, and otherwise it's Druids and Balder, and some Shamblers. So the Boker can actually do some work in there too toward the end of the game. But one of the things that list wants to strive to do is basically use the Woldrath and use Wrong Eye to do the only work, and then use the Druids to control the rest of the game by pushing models out, by being in the way, being hard to kill in melee, being hard to kill at range. Balder uses his feet to keep things away. So again, you know, I did lose the Woldrath in one of the games, but and I have other things that I didn't play very well in those games. But when it works, what you were able to do is slowly use your Woldrath to chew through an entire list by keeping the Woldrath safe throughout the game to do work, as well as trying to win on scenario and things like that. So these are all things that you can do to exploit when you see Warjacks. So yeah, really the situation you want to do though is you want to recognize your win condition. I played, this is not a Warjack example, but I did find myself in a situation in Mark II where I was playing Morvana 2 into Bradigus. And now Bradigus isn't a Warcaster, and he's not bringing Warjacks, but he was bringing Wolds that were really hard to kill. And I was playing very infantry-heavy Morvana 2. It had, I think, everything but, it was like Gorak Stalker, bare bones battle group, and the rest was like Blood Trackers and Wolf Riders or something. I don't even remember, but it was all infantry. And I very quickly recognized that my only win condition in that game was going to be assassinating Bradigus. So I flanked super hard with my Blood Trackers on one side and super hard with some other infantry on the other side, and kept some to occupy him in the middle. And eventually I was able to throw enough javelins at him to kill him. But that was really going to be my only win condition in that game, was to circle around him as hard as I could, and then start throwing spells and javelins at him until I killed him. And my opponent recognized it, but I think was not really able just to divide his army up enough. And I think, as I recall, I was able to win through that route. Now, it doesn't feel good when you're doing things like that, but your opponent's probably going to know that it's coming. So if they're able to, if they know and they're able to, they're going to try to stop that as their only goal. So that's kind of just part of how that game's going to play out. So, like I said, recognize your win condition. If you don't have the ability to crack 8 Khador Heavies or 8 Crusaders from Protectorate or whatever the case may be, don't try to. Either look at the scenario or look at the caster, or look for a way to find the caster to get them killed. If you can play that attrition game safely, do that, right? Or if your opponent gives it to you, right? So some of the times what people won't realize when they're playing one of those Jack Spam type lists is that they might have been better off just throwing all of the things at you, but instead they sort of, if they feed you like 2 jacks to sort of contest something or score something because they're like trying to conserve their resources, that's good for you. Send, use a stalker that can sprint, for example. Soften those jacks up with something, send a stalker out, kill it, sprint back, and now if you can do anything to unevenly trade, that's what you really want to get going in games like that, and that's how you can crack additional armor. So a stalker that can sprint, for example, very good choice. Being able to get sprint with your Scarsfell's Griffin so that when you kill one, you can sprint to another one to start flank so that you can send more in. With Kaya, like with Kaya 3, if you can trade up, that's also good, right? So if you could kill a Warjack, say with a single like Scarsfell Griffin, great. If you can do it with a 12-point Satyr, great. Another thing that works that people don't realize is sometimes it is more points technically. So say we send in 2 Winter Arguses with Primal on a Marauder. So you're actually, the 2 Winter Arguses cost 3 more points. But if you can get enough ahead, your opponent isn't actually going to be able to kill that many models, because the way lights work out, usually the math means that you're not going to kill. You're just not, like, generally they're not going to be able to kill more. Like, if you use 2 lights to kill 1 heavy, and they're not going to be able to use 1 heavy to kill those 2 lights. Sometimes they'll be able to, but often it's not going to work. So 2 Arguses are defense 14, so almost any jack is hitting in 7s. Even at dice plus, you're going to need to hit probably 3 times. They only have so much focus, so, think about that. If they have any sort of like support that is helping them a lot, try to kill that. Things like that. So anyway, also make sure you're evaluating. A crippled Warjack is often just as good as dead. We have high defense, so if you actually manage to knock out both their weapon systems, or if you knock out their Cortex, and they're only going to be able to make like 2 mediocre attacks against you, or maybe only they can make as many attacks as they want, but their arm systems are out, so they're going to be less dice to damage and whatnot. That's also going to play out very well for you. Anyway, so that's sort of a high-level primer type look at what do you do into Warjack spam. Don't assume that this means it'll be easy. It probably won't be. It's probably going to feel very difficult, but just be confident. Like, look at the table, look at what you can do. Always try to go first. Almost always against Warjack spam behooves you to be the person going first, because if they can't take as much table space, that's going to give you, even though you won't be the first one eligible to score, it's going to give you a big edge on not being, them not setting the line of engagement so far forward that you can't recover. So I almost always go first against Warjack spam, barring some very specific terrain or situation that I think I can score scenario points faster. So anyways, that's what you do in a Warjack spam, or that's some advice into it. Again, as always, if you like what you heard, subscribe to the channel, check the bell, you'll see when new episodes happen. Check out the Discord or the Facebook group. I'm also on Twitter, Cheddar Caveman there as well. And thanks for watching.